Good evening, everybody. I hope everyone is safe in their homes and, taking this time sometimes to ponder on what we should do after Corona outbreak, how the world would change. And today I have with me a very close associate of Marg Institute who has been working with us very closely. He is none other than Dr. Neavis Morais. He is the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences of the Open University of Sri Lanka. He holds a PhD in Development Economics, Regional and Rural Development from the Asian Institute of Technology, Thailand, and has an MA in Economics from the University of Colombo. He's also uh, spearheading and very much part of the master's program that Marg Institute holds in collaboration with the Open University of Sri Lanka. And Dr. Maras also happens to be one of our governing council members of the Marg Institute. Good evening, Doctor.
Good evening, Aman.
Good evening. Right. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview and speak something from share something from your knowledge and maybe give a kind of a positive message. The theme of our interview series is weathering COVID-19. How can we weather the COVID-19 storm? So I'll go on with our first question. You see, first of all, I'd like to ask your opinion, your expert opinion on how people, how development science, specialists, social scientists, economists, how will they view development in a post-corona scenario? Will people have a different perspective towards development? Will there be a new norm even in economics? That is my first question.
Right. The question of new norm, yes. I mean, currently, most of the economic activities are disrupted, both at macro as well as the local level. The entire economic activities are disrupted. So, post COVID-19, there will be a new normal, definitely. But I don't know whether there will be a paradigm shift, as you were talking about, whether there will be a new look from the social scientist. I doubt, because currently what many of the social scientists and also economists are focusing on the recovery and getting back to normalcy. Right? So there is no paradigm shift as we expect in the way that economy will be managed or economy will perform. That is doubtful. So we are all hoping for a recovery of the same that we used to have. Right?
Now,
so there is.
I think things get, we always use the term things getting back to normal. But the reason why I asked this question, Doctor, is because of this now. In all over the world, there have been lockdowns and people have been indoors for close upon 1 month. And they would have had time to spend with the families. They would have time to even look at their life and their work environment, their business in a different way. They would have spent more time even with the communities. Right now in Tibirigasaya, around the neighborhood, we have a WhatsApp group. And suddenly I realized there are neighbors who I never met and I don't even know their names. And we are sharing about, where can I get this? And people kind of, are very helpful. And that community feeling has come. So, you see, when we started this institute and also a long time ago, even when we started this master's program, postgraduate diploma program in development, right from the start, people like Dr. Chandra Bose, Dr. Gunatilakam, Dr. Mahim Mendes, you, the whole faculty were, very focused in looking at development from a multidisciplinary framework, looking at it from economic, political, social aspect. And as time went on, we had this discussion. We said we should look at it from a spiritual angle as well, from the values angle.
Yes.
So I tend to think these days, while we are locked down, we are indoors, and we have sometimes more time to think about our life, about future. There will be that spiritual angle, aspect coming in, where we look at contentment. Organizations think, it's a given fact that we have to grow. We have to grow by 25% every year. Or we have, as an organization, we have to grow. So I think we are now kind of challenged with that idea. Grow. Why? How do we grow? Horizontally, vertically, grow in a different dimension, quality-wise. So that is why I brought forth this question, because there will be this whole thing of responsible consumerism from one hand, and the other, I do not know how it will affect, because there will be a recession, global recession, how it will affect our industries like garments, plantations like tea or whatever. So that is, I'm wondering whether suddenly people will for some time, tend to kind of consume in a different way. But then again, human beings forget, and therefore they'll go back to the original way of living. So that is there.
Yes, that is quite understandable. The thing is now, there is a revival of socialization process because of this people confining to home. There is a revival of interaction within the household and the neighborhood, but also in the virtual forums. We are, as usual, we have been engaged with many people outside home through various online platforms. So I wonder whether that revival is a real revival, right?
Yeah.
So that's a social aspect of this corona incident. But as for the ways of thinking, the ways of living, I don't see much change in the way people look at their life. There is some sort of cooperation and feeling of fraternity, in times of crisis. That is natural. But I don't see, see change, right? In the way that we look at our lives, the patterns of consumption is the same now. When restrictions are imposed on the markets, the poor and rich are differently affected, right? Those who have access, those who have money will have more access to supply chains, but the poor will be disproportionately affected. So that's, in times of crisis, you see this happening. There is some sort of a cooperation, volunteers coming up, but when we get back to normal, because the larger system is same, our economy, the way we look at prosperity and progress, we still have the same imagination, same goals in our life, and there's a particular way of getting at it. So I don't see a drastic change in those aspirations of the people.
Okay.
So when the post-COVID-19, it's a personal view, I don't see much change in the way we look at our lives.
Okay. Now, I'm going to go into a different subject, since you being part of the Open University for some time. and also in part of the master's program with, that we conduct in collaboration with the Marg Institute. Now, in the area of education, I see, particularly in the case of small businesses, um, the informal sector, particularly the non-agricultural informal sector. That's an area that might get hit very badly. So those who survive or those who carry on the business will be those who quickly adapt to things and also learn things fast. So there would be a need for knowledge, um, how to do your marketing, how relationship management, say financial management, how to kind of uh, sort of innovate and go into new markets, come up with new services. Like for instance, you will see the three-wheel drivers. Now they are closely linked with the suppliers and they are delivering stuff. There would be other opportunities as well. So at the base of it, at the fundamental aspect is people need to learn. People need to acquire knowledge fast. People need to acquire knowledge even in the area of digital marketing, right? So do you see opportunities for trainers and educations, and how would you look at it from the university point of view?
Yeah, in this sector there is an opportunity. I would say there is now, as a result of this COVID-19 incident, the education sector and also other sectors, I mean the business sector, have been, even household sector, have been looking for more new ways of getting on with the usual life, and they have been looking for more technologies, right, to meet their ends. Businesses wanted to use more technology to reach the people who are now confined home. The educational institutions have been thinking about alternative ways of continuing teaching. So there is a good amount of interest created within different sectors to seek more technological solution to offset whatever adverse effects as a result of COVID-19. So that trend is likely to continue because there is some benefit to that. People have become more digitized, right? People started paying their bills through online, and they started ordering groceries through online. They started depending on certain technologies. Universities have started exploring more technology-based content delivery and assessment. So there is a enthusiasm in making use of the technology to facilitate various markets. So even post COVID-19, I hope the trend, there will be a change in the trend. The institutions will be adopting more technologies, and that is to the advantage. But of course, there are structural limitations are there to what extent the ordinary people have access to technology, data, and resources to use these technologies. So there are challenges on the other hand, but there is a trend developing in this area that some potential I see.
No, I think definitely when it comes to the service delivery, there has to be some changes. They have to come up with, even the telecom regulatory authority will have to think of crowd basing and liberalizing free data and giving data, making the entire country connected, having maybe Wi-Fi facilities, fiber optic facilities, so to speed up the thing. So that part also has to happen. Now, what has been your experience, Doctor? Now, you have an online platform where you upload most of the course material. various reading material, whatever. We have been trying to get through to our uh, students as well. Do you see them coming to the platform and downloading stuff, or is it being monitored? How is it with the other departments of the Open University?
So in the
I'm
case
not
of
just
the Open
talking about
University,
humanities, faculty of humanities and social sciences, but the other faculties like the education, the law, agriculture, all those faculties. Have you been in contact with your staff members to see whether people are using the platform, or do you think that will take some time?
well, the Open University have already been using a lot of technology in education. Even before COVID-19, that there has been a transition from traditional distance teaching to technology assisted learning. So we have been transforming our system. So we are in a way pioneers in that sector. But then during the COVID-19, we wanted to continue the entire university, not only Open University, even other universities, the conventional universities also wanted to continue their services, particularly teaching through online platforms. So we wanted to continue, but what actually happened then before doing this, we conducted certain studies, certain assessments among the students and the staff, and what we found, there are problems with access to the internet, the data, and also the level of concentration on education at this moment is very low, even though people have access to computers and data. The level of concentration is very low. So because they are burdened with other concerns like
There's a
ensuring
lot of
food
kind of
security.
anxiety about the
Yeah, it's not a
situation.
priority.
Yeah,
This learning is not a priority during this
because
period, although there is.
I think, Doctor, because most of our students, I think 99% of the students, or 100% of the students are already employed, right? And they are doing jobs. So I think right now they're thinking about their career, their job, much more than
Yeah, but there are serious problems other than learning. Say, for example, income is affected. Many companies have not paid their full salaries. So particularly our employed students are affected by way of lack of income and lack of access to groceries and other essentials. And other social problem, having children at home and elderly people at home, and there are very special concerns about these vulnerable groups. And also quite a significant percentage of our students actually do not have the devices, they may have mobile smartphones in their hand, but that's not ideal for online learning. It's too small. So they need to have these the necessary devices, necessary connection, and also access to data. Right? Of course, the government wanted to give more access to free access, free data, but to what extent that help the students to participate in learning activities, we are not quite sure. So we could not actually continue teaching in the way we wanted, other than trying to be in contact with the students, right? We are assuring them that we are there. These platforms are open. I mean, they can approach us. But structured course delivery is not taking place. So that's because of this, the reality that we are facing due to COVID-19. So that's the situation in the universities. Even if you have resources, the participation in online platforms is very poor.
Very poor. Dr. Morais, I have one more question. I think I asked this same question from Professor Tilak and Abesing, and also from Professor um, Sirima Labera. About the structural changes that development, or say, the World Bank or IMF may, I hate to use the word impose, but may kind of put on uh, to developing countries as Sri Lanka. You know, Colloquially we say, they have this one shoe fits all kind of uh, suggestion, privatization of public institutions that are not operating to the full potential, that are not efficient or financially viable. But do you think that being pushed, or do you think a different way of structuring this, maybe the private sector taking over some of service deliveries that they can take over and making it efficient, making it more kind of available to people, uh, rather than uh, complete privatization. Looking at a public-private partnerships, do you think both the private sector and the public sector would be ready for that sort of kind of structural change?
Well, this structural transformation is something that Sri Lanka as a country has been engaged in. I don't know whether it was forced on us. I mean, Sri Lanka to some extent willingly have been engaged in a structural transformation process after 1978. So that is still continuing, right? But there are certain sectors which are not yet open for private participation, private sector participation, particularly education, energy, and some other sectors. So this has been part of the reform agenda for quite some time. But then if you look at what has actually happened, although Sri Lanka tried to reform these sectors, particularly education, it did not happen. But through other ways, the government has allowed private sector participation anyway in the market, allowing foreign collaboration and training some of the young people in fields that are mostly needed by the private sector, and of course students migrating to other countries through student exchange programs. So that privatization has already taken place, although it is not yet formalized. So whether we like it or not, that market has been flourishing for quite some time, right? Right. My point is, what developing countries should focus on is actually social protection. Now, Sri Lanka, although we have been labeled as a welfareist country, welfare-oriented country, when you look at how we actually take care of the people in times of COVID-19, we really see the vulnerability of our system, vulnerable systems. How many people are left out? How many people are become more vulnerable in times of crisis like these? We have seen that the state support not reaching the poorest of the poor even in times of crisis, and there are a lot of people who are left out of the system. So we hear from the media a lot of suffering of the people, lack of protection of the large mass of the people. So we need to really question the existing the social protection mechanism in Sri Lanka, whether it actually helps protect people in times of, at all times, not only in terms of crisis, but also at all times. So that we need to focus on that in times to come.
I have a slightly different view on this, and I like to kind of present and get your view. You see, the countries that have a good social welfare system, those are the countries that are coming out well in the COVID-19 pandemic. So that creates this whole idea, okay, should we strengthen this social security, that whole structural system? Second thing is, now we at the very local level, you take the Grama Nilidhari level, we have a system where the Grama Nilidharis, when they take their wards, they know how many houses are there. They know who are the people, who are the widows, who are the single mothers, single parent households, large households, the poor households. That data is available. So I think that the challenge is how to get more stakeholders involved in this. Whether we could get the private sector, the various private organizations, the media, say mobile companies who could do some tracing as to where these people are and whatever. Get the supply chain also involved in this. I don't think it's a very difficult task, because you take the smallest unit. You are taking the Gramal Lindar division. So he knows, okay, how many kades are there, how many shops are there, how many A grade, B grade, C grade outlets are there, how many supermarkets are there, how many households are there, what is the breakdown of disposable income in households which are in a very affluent area. I think the private sector should come out and help come up with a kind of a supply and demand kind of structure, a program to see that nobody is left behind. Now I've been talking to various people. I think a couple of Pradeshi Sabhas have actually, they are doing a good job. But then again, tomorrow I'm speaking with Rohana Hettiarachi. I've been on the phone. He has some concerns about how this is operating. So I don't want to let the cat out of the bag right now. I will have a chat with him tomorrow, planning to have that interview. But can't we actually capitalize on the available data and available structure to ensure that nobody is left behind? That's what SDGs is all about.
Well, the thing is that now we do have data. I mean, at the Grammar Ladari level, at the division secretary level, we do have all the necessary data available. I mean, who is who, how many poor households are there. All this data is available. But the thing is, the capacity of the central government functionaries to deliver service. Although Pradeshi Sabhas are there, it is still very much the line ministries that are
right. Yes.
that control the resources. Come to the district secretariat and divisional secretariat and then Gram Ladari level. So the capacity, the efficiency of this system is questionable. So as you suggest, we need to ensure adequate public service delivery. Standards should be maintained, but who should be doing this? Say in many countries abroad, the private sector is brought in to facilitate the service delivery. I mean, we need to ensure service delivery, but how this service delivery is ensured is it can be done through public-private partnership, because the private sector or non-profit sector also has a lot of potential in taking public service to the people. So we need to rethink the way public service delivery is taking place in this country. The same old system is unable to efficiently deliver the services. There are complaints about even some of the relief measures are now handled by the Gramal Ladaris. Actually, there is some of the authorities there, some of the personnel, the staff are there. but then this is now centrally coordinated. So we don't know who is doing what at this time. So there are coordination problems, efficiency issues are there. So the benefits don't reach at the time it should reach and the way it should reach. So this whole lot of inefficiency that you can witness, particularly during crisis time. So as I told you briefly, this is very much connected with the social protection aspect of our society, right? So it's true that the government, the state should ensure that citizens are protected, their food security or income security or health security, nutrition. But how these services are delivered, how it is ensured, the ways of doing that, we need to rethink.
Yeah.
That is where I see alternative ways of delivering services, public-private partnership becomes very relevant there. So how this can happen, how we are going to reform service delivery is another debate that's very much needed at this time. It's an age-old problem actually, which we have not really reformed very much for the past so many years, right? So that's my view on service delivery.
Doctor, before we wind up today's interview discussion, is there any message you like to give, some sort of positive message? Because I'm a firm believer that every crisis there is silver lining at the cloud, and there is new opportunities come, and human beings, particularly Sri Lankans, have that resilience to get back on track. So,
Okay.
is there any kind of a message of hope or some positive thing that you like to give our audience? Am I putting you in a corner?
No. Actually, no. I mean, what I'm going to say is not my own idea, which I have gathered from the, various readings these days. So some of the things highlighted as a positive aspect is that now there is an increased realization that the modern day problems are more global in nature. Say pandemic like this is definitely global. It's not really local. So and previously, some of the environmental related problems, drugs related problem, terrorism related problem, these are all global issues, not particularly localized problems, which need global solution. But in this case, there is an argument that the more global cooperation is needed, more openness is needed in various essential sectors, particularly trading of health-related materials, sharing knowledge, health-related knowledge at a low cost, relaxing tariffs on health-related trade matters. So there is special consideration for all the countries is proposed by different intellectuals. Something that I hope will get into certain global policies through the UN or the other world economic institutions, like it could be World Trade Organization or even World Bank or IMF or the UN. So this realization of more global cooperation and reducing cost of transaction in order to benefit larger population, that is being increasingly realized. So that's actually not my idea, which I have gathered from different, but I see good potential to think about that and factoring those things into future trade and other relations between countries.
Okay, Doctor, thank you so much for your time. I hope everything is all right with you. Doctor, how is the Mana area? You are in Mana right now, are you?
MENA, of course, is largely free from corona. There are no cases here.
So there
With
is no
regard
curfew at the
to,
moment. Huh?
there
There
is
is no
no,
curfew at the moment.
no, there is curfew, but curfew is also lifted on and off. So people have time to go out and buy things. In terms of essential services and supplies, I really don't know the data, but largely the access to groceries and other essential services are available to larger population, but there are the government benefits are also reaching to some extent. In my locality, I find that happening, but there are also volunteer groups very much active, say certain clubs and youth groups, church-related groups. They are also active in ensuring protection of certain vulnerable people. So there is a lot of volunteer work is going on here. So that's what I see. You know.
Yeah, on the positive side here also, we have been, church has been distributing a lot of food parcels, and we were able to do that because people came forward, particularly organizations, wanting to know how they could help, and now trying to buy say 200 kilograms of dal because somebody has come up with the money, right? And so that, as Professor Tilaka Besingha was saying a couple of days ago, Sri Lanka is a giving country and people give. There's that generosity, that point of that is there. So I hope people will not forget.
So in times of crisis now, this is something that is this is how things happen in times of crisis. The poor people are anyway affected. I mean, the middle class and the upper middle class, they will have some access to market, right, and supply chain. They will ensure that their supplies are adequate. But in any crisis situation, we know very well it is the poor that is affected. So the state should have more focus on that, ensuring adequate supplies to these people. If the church fails, if the state fails, of course, then the local groups get into action. But it doesn't happen everywhere. Because in times of crisis like this, there's a problem of movement, problem of coordination. So only some people have access to, access to movement or permission to movement, and how to collect resources and how to coordinate resources, how to take these resources to needy people is very much a challenge, because security arrangements are coordinated by military and police. So people are not clear as to where to get permission and how to take these resources. So that lack of space and freedom, I think Sri Lanka did not think about. Say countries like Singapore, Norway, Switzerland. I mean, I have read about how they manage their essential services and how they how they actually developed special plans to ensure that the essential services are in place. Certain people are working, certain sectors are working, of course, with a lot of protection to these people. So there is no complete shutdown of economic activities in many countries. So in Sri Lanka, we don't know why there is, although certain sectors, people working in certain sectors were allowed to work, like fishing and certain farming communities were allowed, but largely, of course, even if they harvest, how to transport that. We have not thought about the different stages of this economic activity. So we just shut down and allowed certain people to work, but of course they did not have access to market. You saw how markets were closed and transportation stopped, and so there's no point in allowing people to produce but not allowing them to transport. So
there is a serious allegation which I hope to investigate further, that few people are given permits to collect produced from farmers, and they are kind of manipulating and they're exploiting the farmers at the moment. There was a post on Facebook by a close friend of mine, maybe you also know him, where he has seen that farmers, these trucks, transport agents, produce vegetables, particularly vegetables. There's no problem about paddy and rice, because that is more structured, whatever, But vegetables, they buy vegetables at rock bottom prices and sell it 4 times, 5 times the price that they bought. So I hope that the government will look into these things. In future, we hope to.
If you have a tight grip on these economic activities, all this will happen.
Yeah.
There will be black market, exploitation. All that will happen. Of course, the businesses and the rich people will, they know how to store in excess and how to make profit out of this. So that's also normal. I mean, so that's why you need the space for common people to engage in economic activities.
That's
right. So at this time, what we have allowed is space for certain people, not really for the common people. Right. So all these deviation, disproportionate, impacts will be. It's a likely result of a tight grip and complete shutdown of economic activity. So that will react in many ways,
Yes.
So there's no point in complaining if we have not thought about all these aspects before shutting down, right? So there has not been a gradual, kind of preparing people for a shutdown, right? But what we have done is an abrupt end, overnight shutting of all the markets, all supply chains, and later started allowing in the way we want. Right? So then people will compete for access and the powerful people will get access. So the way we do things is different here.
So, anyway, thank you very, very much, Dr. Morais.
Okay. I don't know whether I was able to answer your
No, I think
question.
it was very helpful. I think we can take this message out. Thank you so much for your thoughts and your analysis and your views on the current situation. I hope everything will be okay with you. You'll be able to come down to Colombo soon.
Right. Because I don't have much information. What we have is just some common sense and something that we read here and there. We are also like everybody else, too preoccupied with our safety and daily how to manage this isolation, right? So so engaging in intellectual discourse is very difficult at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Right.
Good night. Okay.
Good night, doctor.
Okay. Thanks for calling.